Welcome back to the show. This is Brendan Davis. I'm glad to have you here this week. And my guest for this week is an old friend, someone I've really been looking forward to talking to for the show. We stay in touch and chat and catch up pretty frequently, and especially these days while everybody's stuck at home, it's pretty convenient to catch up with old friends. And one of my more interesting friends, and I've had some interesting ones if you've listened to this show, is a dear old friend of mine, my friend Max Bartoli. Max has quite a history and a portfolio of achievement and accomplishment, but where we really connect has to do with a lot of sort of philosophical approaches to the world. And we certainly have our own opinions, but I find that Max is one of those friends with whom, when we really get into it privately and candidly, a little more than we may on this show, we really sync up a lot. And so it's always interesting to get his perspective, especially because he's one of the more international people I know. And again, if you've listened to some of the shows, you know that there are an awful lot of international, well-traveled people. But Max is coming to us today, originally from Rome, Italy. I know him from Santa Monica. He's lived in D.C. and New York, and he's coming to us today from Veracruz, Mexico. Mr. Max Bartoli. How are you, Max?
Hi, Brendan. I'm fine, thanks. Thanks for having me. Well, it's so good to be here.
I am really glad to have you here, man. It's been a long time coming. Before we sort of launch into all the tales that you can tell, give us the short version of where you're from. I just laid out the bullet points, but sort of where are you from and what was your, what's your origin story? And we'll get into the present day here a little bit.
Yeah, I'll try to make it short. I was conceived in Mexico, delivered in Italy, so designed by Italians in Mexico and, made in Italy. I was raised and my parents were used to say badly educated between Florence and Rome.
Okay.
I got a law degree in Rome and in business law, and then I moved my entire family moved to the US in 1994. I've been going back and forth since then. I moved to the UK for 2 years, and then the US, where I became a citizen as well, and now I work for the World Bank as a media consultant and producer, and I've been, of course, I worked in advertising, I worked in the entertainment, I still do. And now I work for the World Bank and I work in sport.
Excellent. Well,
I hope that was short enough.
That's so short that I'm going to ask you more questions. So let's jump all the way to the end. How did you end up in Mexico? And we're going to go back, but let's get to
LA. Okay, one of the best things that LA gave me was letting me meet my beautiful wife, who is Mexican, American as well, but her family lives in Veracruz, so we came here. We started coming here, of course, after we got married at least twice a year, and the place is very nice, it's beautiful, so we wanted to have a place here anyway. Plus, it's beautiful, and each dollar can get you, is worth 4 times more, so that's good. And on November 9th of 2016, when we woke up and we realized who had won the White House, I turned to my wife and said, okay, I want a way out. So let's look either in Canada or in Mexico. I mean, Italy is always Italy, of course. We can always go back there, but I wanted something, closer.
Right.
And we found a beautiful place here, so that's it. We are trying to spend as much time here as possible. Of course, she has her family here. I moved my family here after the COVID crisis exploded, so I can have my parents closer to me. And, it's a bit more controlled where we live.
So your parents, and I know your parents, and I'm glad they're doing very well. So they've been in D.C. for years, but are they in Veracruz as well, or are they nearby?
Yes, they rented a 2-bedroom apartment close to ours, like literally next door, for $400. So
wow.
Wow.
Yeah. And I know Veracruz, I've never been, but I've seen it, and this came up with a common friend. We were on a 3-way chat, and my friend knows Mexico, and when she heard Veracruz, she's like, "Oh, that's so nice." And so I can.
It's nice.
So your parents are they sort of riding out the COVID crisis? I mean, are they going to plan to go back to DC? You think once it sort of settles, and that's really where their home is? Yeah,
of course, we'll do, but I would rather spend my sort of quarantine or self-quarantine or stay-at-home period, looking at the sea, and it's better.
Yeah, I can totally relate. I'm not close enough to see the ocean. Although if I go up on the rooftop of this building where I'm subletting, I can see it from in the distance. But when we got to know each other, I was living in Santa Monica, and you weren't in Santa Monica, but you were there all the time. So I remember that sometimes when we would have meetings or coffee, we were at the ocean or something. Yeah, and there's something really soothing about that kind of connects you to. Not for me to sound like too much of a hippie this early in the interview, but it really connects you to the greater world.
Absolutely.
It's a grounding thing, right? Helps give you perspective.
It's a water.
Yeah.
I guess it's a water.
It's a big body of water. Well, I was telling you before we got started. I mean, the only real challenge of interviewing you is some people, the people I have on, all have a lot to say. So the challenge is usually kind of condensing that down. And with some people like you, that you could sort of do let's do an hour on this tiny slice of your adventurous sort of life. And I also, people say similar things about me, but for me, I'm just living my life. And it's all kind of one long thing. But you've had quite a portfolio. You have quite a portfolio of your interests. Before we get too much into the present, what was it like growing up for you? I mean, you mentioned, business law and you had those interests. You were pretty fixated on business and law and things related to finance. This is what I'm setting you up, I guess, to talk about is something that struck me back when we were working on developing a few projects a long time ago, because at the time you were writing and directing these projects. But as a producer, not all directors are producers. I mean, a lot of directors also take a producer credit, and many of them have earned it for various reasons, but they typically are handing off the producing part to somebody else, somebody like me or somebody like you who's only producing for them. But you kind of do everything, and that was what struck me, was that you really had a depth of experience and understanding and perspective about how the business worked. So entertainment as well as the broader business world. And I say all this to say that having such a well-rounded perspective is obviously very useful. I think a lot of times people make a mistake where it's one thing to specialize, but then you need to sort of pull out and specialize in something else for a while, so you develop this portfolio. Did that come naturally to you? How did you kind of develop your approach to the world, or is this just sort of just how it worked out for you? Have you thought about the metaphysics of this?
Yeah. In a certain way, it kind of worked out that way. I mean, I started my law degree, my law career at university, and when I was 3 years in, and I was doing pretty well, I came across musical theater, and there was a big bug. And of course, my dad brought me to, I'll make a very long story short. My dad brought me to New York first time. I was like 22. We went to see Cats. I got out of the theater, the Winter Garden, saying, okay, I want to do 1, 2. And of course, you don't expect, a normal person would say, yeah, okay, let's, whatever. Let's do a little thing, study. No, I wanted to go, of course, to Broadway. So, cut the long story short, I teamed up with one super young composer, Italian, Gianluca Cucchiara. We have become super great friends. And that was 1991. 1994, I hired a bunch of people. 1994, we recorded with the Royal Symphony Orchestra, a 40-piece orchestra, the concept demo of the musical that we have put together called MacGregor. set up in Scotland in 1703, and 1603, sorry. And in 1995, we were off Broadway showcasing this musical. So that experience in itself led to and continued until 2001 was my school in terms of producing. So we produced 4 concept demos. We produced 3 readings, 2 workshops between London's West End and Broadway and off Broadway. We went around, and that was what really. And then at the same time, because I realized I was kind of putting things together, and my background law, of course, was being very useful. Was put to a use. I was hired by another friend of mine who became one of my closest business partners, Peter Andrew Thiel, in London to do small productions of commercials and in the advertising industry. So at the beginning it was okay, let's try this thing, is new, but there are some parallels with producing for theater, and I studied a lot. I got hold of all the manuals I could get a hold on. I went to Barnes and Nobles, and I spent hours and hours and hours reading everything that was on a shelf. And at that point, that was 1999. In 2000, I started working for an Italian advertising agency, and they ended up calling me the miracle guy, because everything that seemed impossible, they could, ask me, and I was kind of making it happen one way or the other. I ended up losing money with that company, in the sense that the owner of the company ended up stealing 21.3 million euros, bankrupted the company, sent 60 people at home, but that's a different story. But the good thing is that we worked for the best clients and the largest clients in Italy and in Europe. And at a certain point, I decided that I wanted to direct. And I'm like, you know what? I've always wanted to direct. So again, I spent 2 years studying every single manual that I could find. And then after studying, I said, you know what? I want to now... It's time for practice, right? Practice time. So I spoke with a couple of clients that I was producing commercials for, and I told them, listen, I think I can do this. This is a deal. Let me direct this. If you don't like it, I'll reshoot it at my own expense. Wow. They said yes. Everybody liked what they were doing. After the second time, I'm like, okay, I think I can do it. Let's not push the envelope too much, just in case.
No more money back guarantees.
No more money back. I'm directing. Period.
Yeah. Here's the real yes or
exactly.
no. Yeah.
And it took it from it took off from there. And then, as you know, in 2005, I decided to do a short, Ignorus. And of course, again, I didn't like to do things easy. So I ended up producing, directing, and writing a short that was a period piece, full all costumes, etc.
Pretty insanely ambitious. All of your productions.
Most
people think, let's make a short film as sort of a proof of concept of what I can do, and these are my interests, and I'll find something that sort of highlights what I can do. But tell us about Ignotus a little bit, and I'm gonna. I know you like to be more modest, but please, no one will know unless you tell us. Please tell us about the journey of that a little bit, including some of the acclaim that it got, because I know it was very, very moving. You got some really fantastic reception to that.
Yeah, I don't like. I mean, I always.
I'll try not to embarrass you too much, but please tell us this story for the record here.
I always see when I produce something or I direct something. I always see things. I can never see things at my creatures as in an objective way. In the sense that I always look at things that I could have done better, all the mistakes, etc. So
it's all I see too.
And I always try to fix, but. Not to brag, but the two things that I know I developed and I know how to do extremely well is make $1 look like 10 on the screen in each type of production. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So with Ignotus, I had done already. I had learned to do that in advertising because the boss that I mentioned before was used to come, back to the office celebrating that he had just gotten like $1 million contract and in front of the entire office, and then turn to us at the video department saying, "Guys, now you have to produce a nice spot for me." And we were like, "Oh yes, that's nice, lovely. $1 million is, we can do something nice." And he was like, no, you didn't get it. You have $80,000. Make it look like $1 million. The rest is for me.
Wow.
So, okay, well, whatever. Sometimes we were able to get to 100,000, but that was the idea. So with Ignotus, we followed a little bit the same path. I had an idea. I wrote it down. I sat there for a year and a half. I started shopping around, and of course, everybody talks a big game, but when it comes down to put the money where their mouth is, none put down the money. So I had a friend who was a line producer who budgeted it, and it was like €120,000 short film, right? Costumes, horse. I mean, medieval. Yeah. The whole thing set up in the Middle Ages.
Piece. Yeah.
But tons of sequences, it's like Braveheart meets whatever. Yeah. So horses,
it's kind of crazy ambitious for a short film.
Yeah. Fantastic locations. So €120,000 first budget. So one day, I think it was August 22nd, 2005. Yeah, I got bored. I was in the office and I decided, you know what? I'm tired of being brought around by these people, by everybody. I'm going to do it. How much do I have in the bank account of savings? As always, $25,000. Okay, fine. I'll do it with that. I took the screenplay, I took the budget, and I started going through every single line of item and like cut, for free, cut this, rewrite this, rewrite that. Yeah. So eventually I managed to get deals. Nice deals. I got Farani, which is one of the oldest costume shops in Italy. They had amazing costumes from Pasolini's movies. I mean, it's stuff that each of those costumes were worth like $3,000. And they gave me the whole thing, 80 costumes for free.
Yeah.
Then I went to. I scouted around and I went to Sant'Antimo, which is an incredible place in Tuscany that has a medieval cathedral with the it's not a cathedral, it's a church with the best example of mosaic from the 900 in the world, you know. And of course nobody could get that place. And one way or the other, I ended up getting that place. So only 2 people shot there until we shot. Franco Zeffirelli and myself. So it was a good thing. Great added value to the production. It's a great added production value to the film because it looks nice. And I got everything. I got everything that I needed in order to make it with $25,000. So. We got a great crew. Maurizio Calvesi was my DP. Maurizio is one of the best, if not the best, cinematographer that we have in Italy. Malù Di Leonardo, my good friend. One of the best ADs that we have. I mean, I put the whole team together.
Sure.
We did it. We put it out, thinking, well, let's see how people will react. The short won, I think, 30 awards internationally. Was seen by 2 prime ministers and by Pope Benedictus XVI, who, to my surprise, wrote me back a letter. Yeah. I mean, through his personal secretary, saying that he had enjoyed it and that he was praying for me. I'm like, okay, I'll take it. Thank you.
Yes.
So I always say to my friends, if anything, I'm a sinner, so in case anything goes wrong, I think and I hope I can use that letter to write some of the stuff off, right?
You want to show the letter from the Pope to get yourself a little credit if you need to at some point?
It's like, can I have a discount on the sentence,
Can
please?
I trade you this for 10 Hail Marys?
Yeah, exactly. So that was it. And, And that was when I moved to LA.
Right.
And I met you, I think, 2006.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
5 to 6, yeah.
I appreciate that story, and it's relevant. Is that online now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll get the link. I'll get the link for this. Plus, after we, I'll get whatever links you'd like to share for anything we discuss.
Absolutely.
But I would love to be able to, especially include that among others with this, because I mean that's what made such a big impact on me. And again, we won't go totally down the rabbit hole, but it's things you said. I just kind of want to highlight a few of them, because this is also what I clearly saw, me coming at it as a upcoming producer trying to figure things out, and especially I think this is obviously a generalization, but I believe it's true enough that it applies, and you could agree or disagree, but especially you started on your producing directing path a lot sooner than I did. I went to school and I studied those things, and that my focus was really writing. But then I was below the line for many years and also editing. And when you went into it, you went straight for that, and you really had this methodical approach. And some people learn it piece by piece. Some people study it academically. Some people have self-study. You kind of come to it how you come to it. But I was really impressed that you were one of the first people I got to know who was not. And again, you had done all these workshops at McGregor internationally. You'd had these other accomplishments that were notable. So I'm not trying to diminish that. I'm just saying that in terms of someone who wasn't already, the context I'm trying to set up is that for someone who was not already, super established and known as a household name, you had the kind of approach to it, to your career and to the business, that got my attention. I realized how methodical and how specific you were, and how you the way you approached it like a business was actually part. That's one part of my own development. Frankly, that's why I kind of wanted to mention it, because I observed, and from working and being friends, and then even things you did outside of us working on it, but like things I knew as your friend, and you approached this in a very practical way, which to you, I think it's probably the only way you know how to do it. But for those of us who have come to it a different way, it sort of had to be figured out. So this context is not just to butter your biscuit, but it's to ask you, what do you think are the essential skills that make a good producer of media, of theater, film, TV, commercials, social movements, and obviously the specifics are different, but generally speaking, what are some of those qualities that you think make a very effective producer? And especially, some of them are intrinsic, but a lot of them are learned. I would say most of them can be learned. What are some of those things to you that are the most important ones to focus on?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for the esteem and for the always nice words that you have toward me. You're super nice. I'm flattered. I don't think I have achieved that much. I set the bar for myself very high, but it's okay. Thanks. So what are the lessons that I learned? To me, being a good producer means the following. One, being able to make things happen. No is not an option. If I bite on something, if I commit to something, that's it. We have to do it. Money cannot be an excuse. So whether you do it for 2 cents or you do it for 2 million, you cannot say, "Oh, I'm doing you a favor because I'm doing it cheap." And I like win-win situations, which means hate is a big word, but yeah, I can use it in this case, in this context. I hate when situations when only one part wins.
Right.
Also because usually that's not you. It's always somebody else,
that,
right?
But it's also not sustainable. Yeah. If one party's unhappy, it's not going to work in the long run.
It's not going to. You're not going to build. A producer is a builder, right? So we build things. We make things. We make sure that we take an idea and we turn it into a product. Whether the product is a commercial, a short film, a feature film, a documentary, a TV program, a live event, it doesn't matter. So we need to have organizational skills, and we need to make sure that we can optimize everything, every resource we have. The way I like to do it is to, when I spoke about win-win, is to find ways to create synergies with people and institutions that can be beneficial for both, and to fund leverage as much as possible. I'll give you some examples. When we did Atlantis Down, my first feature film, again, budget, 3 line producers in Hollywood, $1 million.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, whatever. Okay. If it is 1 million, I can do it with much less. It was true in part, but on the other hand, Avatar needs $500 million. You cannot do Avatar with $500.
Sure,
You know what I
sure.
mean? So, but long story short, we raised $93,000. We went to Virginia and we shot the whole thing. Now, in Los Angeles, if you want to go and shoot in Malibu Creek Park, is $1,200 in permits only.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to Virginia Beach Park, it's $30 for 5 days. Plus, being there, once there, you can find a chalet, one of those bungalows that you can rent for 2 days or 3 days or 4 days for $200. And if you place the camera in one place and you turn it 45 degrees each time, you have 3 different looks or 4 different looks. This means that you can squeeze a lot out of one place, right? That's what we did. We went to Portsmouth. We found a 4-story building, which had at the ground level a restaurant, Italian in quote restaurants, and it wasn't nice. But to me, Italians are Italian.
Sure,
I'm Italian, so
I appreciate the air quotes. Italian restaurant. Yes.
Over it, there were 3 stories abandoned, used as a warehouse. It was formerly a Masonic temple, so long halls, tall ceilings, etc. We rented the whole thing for 5 weeks, and we spent $500.
Amazing.
We cleaned it up, killing 3 vacuum cleaners. Okay, we use every single thing of that place. Why is it win-win? People might think, okay, you won because you got it for $500. Why, the owner didn't earn anything. The owner earned because the owner was the owner of the restaurant downstairs as well. We cleaned up the whole thing. We started shooting. He started inviting people, investors, to see the place as we were shooting. And the moment we left, he had already signed a deal to turn it into a disco.
What? That's awesome.
Exactly. So we got an entire building to shoot in, to have production offices in. We also cut into a deal some meals for some days for the crews for free. This is what I'm talking about.
Sure.
So it's a way to fund leverage, and it's a way to make things happen. So, and I could go on and on. But
sure.
This is, I think, what one of the luxury... one of the things that I learned, not having the luxury of having money,
right,
is to make sure that we can create added value from what you have.
Yeah,
from what we had.
That's a perfect story to illustrate that. Thanks, man.
You're welcome.
Yeah, let's talk a touch about what is your purview and portfolio with the World Bank, and my preface is that you've been involved in quite a few projects that caught my eye, as you've either told me or I've seen the results, via media. But you're very passionate about climate and sustainability. These are things that I know they mean a lot to you, and so much of your work has been to shed light. Some of your professional, corporate or NGO, your World Bank purview seems to cover a lot of areas of sustainability and such, of course, which makes sense. What is your primary, as media director, what is your primary, purview? And maybe talk about a few of the things you've done. I'm especially thinking of course, the projection on the Vatican, which is a story I'd love to hear about, because I know the results, but I've never really heard that story, and I know it's got to be a great one. If you don't mind using that as an example.
Yeah, with pleasure. So I've been working since 2012 for a multi-donor trust fund of the World Bank called Connect for Climate. Connect for Climate is an entity that has different objectives. The main ones are raise the awareness on climate change. And throughout the years, Connect for Climate became a very powerful influencer. We are among those who discovered Greta. Connect for Climate was created by an Italian, my first boss, Lucia Grenna, a fantastic woman, a visionary, somebody who had incredible, ideas that people consider crazy until she did them. Mm-hmm. And she created this reality, Connect for Climate, I was fortunate enough to be hired by her, and now I continue to work with this fantastic group of talented people spread out around the world. Among the many things that we did successfully, we're organizing, for example, a leading series of events to the G8 of the environment in 2017. It's called All for All. It was called All for. No, oh my gosh, I'm blinking here.
This is back when we had the G8, and that's the G7.
Yeah, the now, G8, All for the Green, and we did it in Bologna. We organized 70 events in 7 days. It was an amazing, event. But the best, the jewel of Connect for Climate remains Fiat Lux. Fiat Lux was the first and only projection mapping show done at the Vatican, using the facade of St. Peter's Cathedral as a canvas to tell a story. And the story was in particular a gift to Pope Francis. Lucia Grenna decided to tell part of the environmental part of his encyclica into images and to project it onto the facade of St. Peter. Now, I was the first person she told the idea, because she approached me one day. It was April 2015, and she said, "Max, I would like you to make some mock-ups of the facade of St. Peter with some projection mapping." And I'm like, Lucia, I'll do whatever you want, but it's a symbol of the Catholic Church. They'll never give it to us. This is when I was taught not to take no for an answer.
Right.
So Lucia managed to get a meeting with the Secretary of State of the Vatican, Monsignor Becciu. And to make a long story short, she was able to have the project greenlit after 4 months. There were only 4 people that knew about it in the bank until practically 1 month before that happened. We were completely under embargo. I had to have an argument with some of my colleagues in Rome when I was there scouting, because I couldn't tell why I was there officially. And these 4 people were, Lucia Grenna, Giulia Braga, who is now the manager of the Connect for Climate program, Massimiliano Giuseppe Falcone, who was the person, another very good friend of ours, and the person in charge of getting us into the Vatican, and myself as a line producer and producer on the ground. So as we were greenlighting that thing, we had the Paris terroristic attack. So Europe fell into state of emergency. The Rome City Council quit entirely. So the entire city was under, didn't have any head, didn't have anyone to govern. And we were given 30 days to produce something that cost $3.5 million and involved 180 people.
Wow.
And so Lucia and Giulia and Max practically ended up being the people in making it happen from the political standpoint, which was a miracle in itself.
Sure. Yeah, you want to you want to project, you want to use St. Peter's Basilica as a screen.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, St. Peter, I mean, the Vatican is a state.
Yeah,
Okay, it's
yeah.
not.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
exactly.
talking about I want to do it in the church outside.
It's not
of the
just
home,
religion;
okay?
it's politics.
It's exactly so.
Yeah.
What they did was a miracle. And then, of course, I had to deal with the miracle of the logistics. So I was the only person in charge of getting everything, all the permits. Okay, I was talking with Ace Secret Services because Paul Allen had produced that as well. So Paul Allen sent his people, his agents, which were former MI6 agents, Salima Chao, who was, for the Li Ka-shing Foundation, the second most influent woman in Asia, sent her bodyguards, which were Mossad. We had to, I mean, it was crazy. Yeah. We had to build 2 towers, 20-meter tall, to put 60 projectors on it. It was just a fantastic experience. And we had 120,000 people live on watching it. And the thing was broadcast by 5 satellites by the Vatican and was watched by 4.4 billion people. It was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, probably the most amazing experience.
Well, that's why I had to thank you for sharing this story, and I didn't know the number 4.5 billion, but I knew it was in that ballpark, and so that's what I'm getting at, is that you were part of, bringing this thing to bear that's arguably been seen by, I mean, more than any movie. I don't know if there's a movie that's been seen by that many people, for instance, so.
I don't know, but that made history. After a while, we even found videos. You can find still videos online reading diabolic plans and symbols into the images. I'm like,
there's got to be some great subreddits going crazy on this stuff, you know. Well, they're definitely, I'm sure that I'll get your help to find like a definitive website or, video to highlight, because that's one of the things that just anyone who saw it would be blown away.
Yeah, the original version is still in its entirety uncut online, so I'll send you the link.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so you have so many interests, and something else I know because I know you, and was in your old home in Old Giata. Am I saying that properly?
Correct.
Spent quite a bit of time at one point there in your home, and traveling and scouting and just enjoying Rome with you. And I know from something that it had probably come up just in our basic conversations, when Santa Monica, getting to know each other and working together and becoming friends. But when I was actually in your home, I mean, I knew you were into sport as a young man. I know it's always been part of your life. And I knew you had a passion for martial arts, but I didn't kind of realize the extent of it until I went to your home the first time, and I saw, it's not like the thing that you walk in the front door and there are spotlights and please look at my trophy case, but over in a sort of, in a corner was sort of the area of like, okay, and here's all my trophies and my awards for martial arts. And it was a lot. It's a lot. So you've always been a very sporty guy and interested in athleticism. Tell me a couple of your highlights from your martial arts, but then of course that's going to lead us into what you're doing today.
Yeah, I mean, I practiced karate for 35 years. Then I went to Wing Chun for 5, and now I'm on something else. But martial arts really help me becoming who I am. So I like to compete. I did like to compete when I was 14. Since that age, I started to become super competitive. Perhaps it's my name catching up with me. Maximiliano comes from Latin Maximus Emolus, big competitor. So I guess with the name like this, I couldn't sit on the sideline.
It's your destiny to get involved,
sort of, right?
And to try to win and to win.
Yeah, I mean, martial arts gave me really the mentality and they shape my life. It doesn't matter. how tough things are. If I commit, I roll up my sleeves, and There is no, oh, I'm tired, oh, I have to stop, or plus you lead by example. So and you see that when you do sports, when you teach to other kids, when you teach to other people, so you cannot just say, oh, do this, do that, and not be with the other people doing it. So this is, what really, I took from martial arts, and are lessons that I apply every day, in my daily life. So, and I apply them to my work. So when we were, with regards to what I won, believe me, I won very little if compared to the serious professionals of sports. But it's okay. I was never supposed to become a professional athlete, which is absolutely fine. I've made great friends, and we are still friends. One of my two teachers, we are still very good friends. We talk very often. And what martial arts did, what sports did, was prepare and pave the way for what I'm doing now. In 1994, we needed an exercise. My best friend and I, Roberto Ciccoli, and I needed an exercises to develop more stamina and more explosiveness for karate. So one child to the other, we came up with an exercise, with a drill, with a ball. We needed something that everybody could play in the gym, right? Not just martial arts related, but something that could be played by everybody as a warm-up, etc., etc. And we saw since the get-go that thing that we came up with was pretty cool, and that it was simple. Everybody was getting it. Everyone was liking it. And both boys and girls, men and women, were playing it, expressing the same level. So for over 20 years, we played it. We used it as a drill. And we lended it to other friends in other disciplines, national team of fencing, soccer, baseball, handball, etc. In 2014, we decided to trademark it. And this was when Fireball Extreme Challenge was born. Fireball is the only mandatory co-ed team sport where, as I said, both genders perform at the same level. That guarantees 100% of gender equality on the court, and it's a lot of fun and stuff. So we decided in 2018, after 4 years of testing in 3 different markets, US, Mexico, and Italy, to launch a small grassroots campaign. It was more like a bet. Let's see how it goes. 2 months into it, we understood that we had to change completely strategy, because that thing was taking off, was spreading like fire. So now we are present in 4 countries. We made 3 international deals with international sports institutions. We have requests from another 11 countries, and we did 4 tournaments. It's going, it's been taught in schools. So, and we learned that through sport, we can really help kids understanding big concepts and big principles. Sustainability, for example, is something that, on paper sounds nice, but when you have to explain it as an action, or when it has to be translated into daily behavior, it's a little bit more difficult. Sure. If you start doing it and teaching it or showing it into schools through sports, that's already one thing. Gender equality, big inequalities in general, right? Respect. Right. The good thing about Fireball is that you don't make points. If you are a star, it doesn't matter, because in Fireball you make points and you win by passing the ball to your teammates. Every pass is a point. So the sport itself rewards teamwork and team spirit. Egos have to be put on the side, because you can keep the ball and hold the ball only for 2 seconds, and then you have to pass the ball. So again, it's pretty interesting, and it's being kind of a beautiful roller coaster for us, because it shows us really how we can touch the lives of many kids and people and teachers, through sports in ways that I would have never imagined I could have done with through movies, for example.
What are your there's so many questions I could ask here. I'm almost unsure of where to start. In terms of where you see it going, you mentioned, of course, I know you have certain deals in place, and there's multiple other countries who you're engaging with and working to figure out, bringing it, and having a league, basically different places, having like teams in certain places. Mm-hmm. What's your blue sky vision for this in the next, medium to longer term, and where would you like this to go?
This has the potential of becoming the new world sport, and these are not my words; these are words of executives at Endeavor IMG. Okay.
Yeah.
Personally, I would like it to become an Olympic sport. It's a long way, but the International Olympic Committee has also been pushing for gender equality in sports for the past few years. There is no mainstream sport that can guarantee this, and there is in the industry. Remember, this is a $700 billion industry worldwide. There is a vacuum for co-ed disciplines at competitive and professional level, and we intend to fill that void big time. So there is the opportunity here to do something that is socially good and relevant, and also from the business standpoint, pretty profitable. Mm-hmm. Because so what we want the short version of the answer is we want to spread it as much as possible, and we want to make sure that in the future it could become an Olympic sport.
Well, right now,
ambitious, right? But
that's why you're on the other end of the microphone, sir. Is if you're sitting around eating Cheerios on your couch, no offense if you're listening eating Cheerios on your couch, that's your right as a listener. But if I'm talking to you, you got to put the Cheerios down and tell me a good story. And this is a great story because of the current pandemic response worldwide, and obviously some countries are there's a range of statuses at the moment. So obviously things such as sporting events are generally on hold. And of course, no one has a great crystal ball. I'm not going to ask you to kind of, to get a medical degree in the next 5 seconds. But in terms of your thinking about, moving forward, how to, I assume that there's probably still a lot of planning and such that's happening now, like with any creative production type of endeavor. At the moment, well, we can plan, we can strategize, you can make certain kinds of deals, but then certain kinds of the actual shooting of the film or the actual holding of the concert or the sporting event is on pause for a minute. Are those the sort of things you're doing now as you're sort of working on the strategy, like trying to lay things out for when we're back to normal, or what's kind of your path back to?
Absolutely. First of all, unlike some people who are unfortunately temporarily occupying the White House at the moment, we do rely on 100% on science. So I, don't have the presumption of going out telling people what to, or even planning on things that don't rely on science. So, of course, we need to look at what the World Health Organization and the authorities in each state, in each country say about the rules. We are not sitting ducks. We are trying always to move forward and strategize for the next steps. So we have already thought about a couple of directions where we can go. Definitely, we are going to implement some of these decisions, strategic decisions, in terms of apparel. So we came up with a new line of
so you're going to do
apparel.
Merchandising.
Exactly. That will make, for example, we had already, before the COVID emergency, we had already decided to make the goggles mandatory. This is a non-contact sport, but it's the fastest sport that you will find with a ball.
Yeah, it's pretty wicked. The thing I was going to say, we're going to have clip in here, and I know you recently had, I guess, a championship event, and there's you put together an awesome video. I didn't get the chance to watch the whole thing. Because like some program. Of us, you and I are the kind of guys who are busier than before. We're the fact that we're in our home offices. It's like, okay, great. more opportunity to work, basically. So I haven't had a chance to watch the whole thing. I watched about the first 20 minutes, and I've seen clips. I've seen this. You sent me a lot of things as we've gone, so I'm fairly familiar with it. And I'll just say this because we haven't, if someone's listening, they may not have seen it yet, but the fact that it's co-ed, it's played for now. I guess it's essentially played on basketball courts typically, but the hoop is not involved. I mean, it's the passing. The passing of the ball. So yeah, it's not a contact sport. I mean, you're running around with people and you might bump into people, but the point isn't to try to kill the guy with the ball, which is part of that's why it works as a co-ed sport, because women can be just as quick and everything else.
Totally. Well, women also have more stamina.
Levels the playing field in that way, because it's not about just brute strength and somebody throwing a shoulder like a basketball. There's also the aspect of, can you check this guy or gal? But that's not an issue for Fireball.
No, we have people who are like, and again, it doesn't matter if you are like 6'7" or 5'3". Okay, so we have. If anybody wants to see what I'm talking about, if you can share the link of the TV program at 1 hour and 1 minute, there is a big match, U.S. versus Mexico. The U.S. were great athletes, people being able to jump 10 feet. I mean, it was unreal, and we have it on camera, right?
Right.
But, it didn't end up exactly how they were expecting when they met the Mexicans, and the Mexicans, were like shorter than them. It doesn't matter. We have female athletes who are like 5'5", 5'4", and they can mark somebody who is 6'7". Okay, it's like okay, fine, no problem. So this is why it's also something that is spreading very fast, because again, being LeBron James or Ronaldo or whatever, it doesn't really help here. So
well, I've heard so much about it from you, and I did not know until we started this talk, though, that this was based on an exercise that you and your best friend developed to get to improve your stamina at martial arts. I had no idea that this origin was like 20 years ago, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think, to be honest, when
approximately,
it was 1994, and when we were talking about it the first time, I remember telling to Rob, Rob, we should do something like
94. Well, okay, I'm not a math major. 26 years ago. Jeez.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And when we were talking, we were saying we should do something like what Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson and the U.S. Dream Team did at the Olympic Games in Barcelona 2 years before in 1992, but without the hoops. You remember they were super passing, super fast, and then
absolutely.
There was that tournament, that Olympic Games, and their performance was so memorable that carved.
I saw the '96 version on the floor. That's not about me, but I was one of the 4 sound men, and there were, I think, 22 camera crews. Bud Greenspan, who directs all the Olympic documentaries, I was one of the 4 sound guys, and I was in Atlanta still.
Oh my goodness!
And so I had the all access, my badge. Yeah. My Olympic badge, it had the infinity symbol, which meant all access. Other than the dressing rooms, which is IOC only, there's like families can't go back. Other than the dressing rooms, I could go anywhere pretty much. And so whenever I wasn't, the way it worked is we all had Sky pagers, and they assigned us cell phones back when few people had cell phones. And so there would be certain things, like certain events we covered on a given day, certain stories like they've been following for years in some cases, So on a given day, I might not have any events to go to and meet up with camera crews, or I might have 5 things to try to get around to. But so I got to see so much stuff. And I was never a huge sports guy, but I became a real Olympic junkie in '96 because I got to see things. Like I got to be on the floor for. I was right there on the floor,
Was it 96? Oh, 96?
96. Atlanta 96. Olympics, 1996. Summer Olympics.
4, 5, 6. Yeah.
Summer Olympics in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
so
anyway,
this is, That's pretty exciting.
Yeah. So going back to your question and
Yeah.
to wrap it up is like to wrap my answer is like, yeah, we are planning the reopening. We had a tournament, international tournament in Querétaro, Mexico, that had been postponed. We have 2021 in July, the World Sports Games in Croatia, Zagreb.
Probably hit that one. Hopefully that should be on, hopefully.
Yeah, and so we're already thinking ahead, right? And at the same time, we are looking for investors because, of course, we find ourselves in a very unusual position, at least for my standards, which is we have more demand than we can sustain.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to, sustain it and to
scale
create,
up your organization,
we have to scale up. I mean, we cannot do that with the current thing. So, but it's great. It's a great way. I think that this for me is has been the best experience of my life because I've always liked to try to do good. So I try to do something that is socially relevant, that matters, and that at the same time is a business.
Right.
And sport is just that. I mean, it allows you to get both if you do the right steps.
Well, I'm really happy to hear all these updates, on top of what I already knew about it. And as I mentioned more than once, I'll put links to these things in the show notes. But I'm really excited to see where this goes. And
so am I.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, when you first sent me like even an early like presentation deck, like an informational PDF of here's what it's about, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this could be something. This could really be, I was hearing your vision for it and seeing the highlights between, gender parity and fast moving and non-contact and, ages and sizes, it's not an issue. And I'm like, wow, this really could be like a great equalizer type of a sport. Well,
I think so.
Well, as we wrap up and again, you have a fantastic day job that you respect and are passionate about, and so we'll keep our more pointed thoughts to ourselves in terms of global politics and such. But as we're wrapping up, what are sort of some of your hopes just for the world? I'm sort of finding when I do these talks with people. Initially, I was getting a lot of people's opinions, like, how are you dealing, et cetera, and we sort of just covered that. Now, I'm not wanting to focus on COVID-19 now, other than just name checking it as the reality that we're all dealing with. But what are some of your hopes? I'm especially looking for upside, given all the downside, because God knows the downside is we have to catalog the downside, but. What do you think, in general? I mean, answer it without trying to put a spin on it. But then also, what do you think maybe the light at the end of the tunnel might be on some of this situation in terms of knock-on positive benefits, if any? I mean, I certainly see some, but it's you're the guest.
Well, I don't know. I cannot. I don't know when things will improve. What I know is that what we need as people in general is to find again our moral compass and try to take a break for a second and think about a very simple thing. And I have it in Fireball, so this is a reminder for me every day. If we keep separating ourselves, we are stronger together. In Fireball, we say, unity is our force, but diversity is our strength. Unity is our power, but diversity is our strength. So, or actually the opposite. Unity is our strength and diversity is our power. Meaning we are all different, yes, but we need and must all work together to build a better future. If we do not do that, we are pretty much doomed. And we need to start trying to we are very narrow-sighted. I mean, I think that we tend to be selfish, or we tend to think in terms of our little garden, our little thing. We live in a global village, right? And we are reminded about it every day, and we are borrowing this planet from the future generations. Is not that we are taking it. I mean, it's ours. Nothing is ours. We are here. We are passing by. So let's try to make the best out of it, and let's try to help each other and build something. I mean, I always say building. You should. I mean, you and I know because we are builders, yeah, right?
Right.
Builders. We are masons. So it's kind of in the sense that we build things. As a producers, we like to build things, right? So we like to create things. Creating is always more complicated than destroying. Yeah. You can destroy in 2 seconds. To build something, to build a movie, to produce anything, it takes months, years, decades, etc.
Yeah. I'm familiar.
I'm sure you are.
I'm living it right now, my brother.
Exactly. So I believe that this is what we really need to do. We really need to waken up and realize that we need to change our lives and change the attitude, the way we look at things. We need to start working together. Together as a team, we can hope to get somewhere.
Max, this hour has flown by. When we started, we were sort of discussing this long. You're like, okay, I don't know if I had that much to say, and then now we're at the end. Max, I'll put the links in the show notes. Is there one central place where people should go to find you, or just chase the various links depending on what they're interested in? I
can give you 2 or 3 links, and then they can, depending on what they want to do.
Sure.
On what they want to see.
Got it. Okay. Max Bartoli, Thank you so much, man. I hope you and Fabi stay safe, and please give your parents my best.
Absolutely, and do the same. And please, to everybody who's listening, be safe, be smart, okay, be well.